welcome to this week's episode of Indie Film Wrap. I'm your host, Sierra Kane, and I'm so excited to have a special guest, Monica Arsenault. Monica, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I like to start with your origin story as an actor and or filmmaker. So which kind of came first, and how did that love start?
So this is actually a really sweet story. When I was about 3 years old, my parents put on Singing in the Rain, and I decided to put on my mother's high heels and start tap dancing around the living room. And so she immediately signed me up for ballet classes, and then I was kind of performing all through high school. And then when I was in high school, I started getting into the behind the scenes of filmmaking and decided to go to college for that, and then kind of did a little bit of both, and then ultimately settled on producing and directing and writing, which is what I'm doing now.
That is a really sweet story, and I'm like picturing it, and just it makes me happy. I hope you have photos to share with us.
Somebody does somewhere.
So I think it's really interesting with your story that, you know, several of our guests that come on that do acting and filmmaking, you know, it starts more so with the love of acting. And then it takes them a long time to figure out that filmmaking is something that they're also interested in, or maybe it takes them a long time to kind of get the courage to do filmmaking, to do something completely, you know, on the other side of the camera. And so for you, what helped cement that filmmaking was the path that you wanted to pursue for college?
This is a really good question. I think honestly, it's just that I was such a control freak. Like I just needed to be in charge. And acting is so unpredictable. I loved it. I loved the adrenaline of being on stage, but I also really loved like telling stories and like looking at worlds and looking at the details and really getting into how you could tell the story beyond just being a performer and looking at the larger picture and getting into all of the specifics on how to make it happen. And I got the opportunity to do that in a film class that I was in high school, which was a great experience. And I'm really happy my English teacher like launched this film class while I was going to that school. So that was really, really a lovely experience that I was able to have. And it really solidified that I wanted to do that more in a learning capacity when I was getting a degree.
Any kind of arts integration, I know I'm a big fan of, a big proponent for. I know that meant a lot to me in my high school, getting to do different types of art and media, and I feel similarly fortunate to have that kind of experience. But I think you bring up a really good point about this knowing yourself, right? Knowing if you're the type of person who is completely fine just taking direction from others and not having a lot of control of your career, which is very common for actors, or if you're the type of person who just loves being in a room and like organizing and making things happen, then, you know, maybe producing or directing is for you. So that's
Yeah.
a good one
Actually,
for
one of
our
my
guests to think
friends,
about.
yeah, actually, one of my friends on set was like, what's great about Monica is that if you don't do something for long enough, she'll just do it. It's like, that's hilarious. But it's also really true. I like to do everything. I like to have a hand in everything.
And I know that can help a lot with filmmaking too, is, you know, being involved in the different roles and not just feeling like you have to stick to your role, especially when it's a collaborative project and a small budget project and everyone's working together. So I think that's good advice, you know, for our audience as well, to be curious about the other roles on set, because you might end up enjoying one of those more than what you thought you wanted to do, or what your idea of what you wanted to do is.
Exactly.
So I'd love to hear. I know we talked about Singing in the Rain, and some classic films, but I'd love to hear from you as well. Some of your filmmaker inspiration. So what like and these can be old or new. What inspires you in filmmaking?
Okay, so I'm obsessed with Greta Gerwig. I think that her body of work is very similar to the stories that I would like to portray, and just the way that she talks about women and faith and just like her life and her upbringing. And I love hearing her talk about her process and how her brain works. I feel similarly about Ava DuVernay.
Mm.
I love the way that she works and the way that she runs her sets. Um, I have recently gotten really into horror and the entire horror genre. So I'm really into all of the Jordan Peele stuff. And I recently watched Yellow Jackets on Showtime because
Mm.
TV is the world that I want to live in ultimately. So I've been really just like trying to familiarize myself more with that genre.
I think that's so fascinating, and this is what I love about interviewing is because, everyone has a different story, and a different path, and when I think of people who love horror, you know, for me, most of the time, those are people who have loved it from a young age or as a teenager, and it's just like been a continuous love. And so I'm curious to hear for you when you say this is kind of more of a recent development. What was it for you that has been drawing you into that?
So my whole life, I hated horror. I was like, I don't know why you would want to go sit in a dark room and be scared. Why would you want that? Like, I get enough of that from my nightmares. And I saw Climax in theaters with my friend, and I loved it. And I've watched it like every 6 months since I saw it, and it's so beautifully done. And I loved everything about it, like the way that the tension built and how it was a psychological exploration of the, like, basically a bad drug trip. Um, and I really was just interested in some things that were more like that. And I realized that there were a lot of genres of horror that were not just like gore and jump scares and those kinds of things. There was this whole other genre that was just like really delving into the psyche of human experience. And I've been really getting into that lately.
Yeah, I like that. It doesn't just have to be flash, there can be like I think of horror similarly to hot sauces where you have some that are just like a hot burn, like what you're gonna get, you kind of know what to expect, and then you have others that have so many neat flavors and it's a slow burn and you keep taking bites even though maybe it's pushing your limits because the flavor is there and it builds
Yeah,
on the spice.
I
So
love that analogy. Like that's a beautiful metaphor. I'm forever going to compare horror films to hot sauces now.
and now I'm like craving some salsa. Um, but I definitely can see I definitely see a bit of a correlation from what I saw with the trailer for Nun Habits to Greta Gerwig. So I'd love for you to share with our audience a little bit more about what Nun Habits is about. You wrote, directed, produced. So share with us a little like where the idea came from and how that project got started.
So, Nun Habits is a web series that I made in 2018 with friends and colleagues that I had. It was the first project that I made outside of school. It was something I had written the pilot of when I was in school, actually for a class. We were taking a web series class, and my teacher made us write a character monologue. And
Mm.
I wrote this monologue about this nun just talking about her experience. Just converting to Catholicism and just like really like diving headfirst into her spirituality while also smoking a joint. And I just really wanted to keep exploring that. So I finished writing the script, and people read it and they said that it was really good and that they wanted to help make it. So I crowdfunded for it, and I think we shot like 7 days over a 10-day time period to shoot all 6 episodes. And each episode is like 5 to 8 minutes in that time frame. I think the whole thing runs about 40 minutes. And yeah, it's about a bisexual nun who befriends a high school student who's coming to terms with her sexuality, and they figure out where they fit in the Catholic Church. And it's had a really successful festival run. It finished up its festival run in September, or yeah, September at the New Jersey Web Fest. And yeah, I'm really excited about it.
So I'm very curious because it seems like everything you do is intentional. There's a reason behind it. Whereas, not to say that that's not the case for any filmmaker, but I'm noticing this, and so I'm curious the decision um, to do it as a web series instead of a longer short or instead of a different format. So can you share some insights on that?
I was really looking at this story and the implications of this story and the future of this story, and just it felt like it lent itself to a web series format. It felt like these characters lived beyond a 5 to 10 minute short, and it felt like they lived multiple seasons if that gets to happen. And I really wanted to, give April a clear, like, season one of coming to terms with the fact that she had feelings for her classmate Megan, who I play, and then Sister Cecilia coming out to her supervisor, who's Sister Agnes. So I really just wanted to give that like season arc and then set that all up for them to explore that further in season two.
As you think about your career or path as a filmmaker, that's a great tip is if you want to do more TV, then a web series might be a better path than a short film or a feature film as your first project, because you can start to, work on the editing of that and the cadence and the episode structure and arc. So I think that is a neat thing for people to consider when thinking about these projects and the path to get them to where they want to go.
And I've also done a couple of shorts since then, and I've really looked at like the short film genre as a standalone medium, as not a proof of concept for a feature or not a first episode of a web series. And it's a really different form of storytelling than an episodic or a proof of concept situation. So that's, yeah, definitely like consider the format that you want your story to be told in and like what it lends itself to.
So with that, what were some maybe like interesting stories from set or great learning experiences, whether it was something that failed and went wrong and you learned from, or something unexpected that you had a challenge that you had to deal with when working on the series?
Something that I think was the most difficult was crowdfunding. It's such a controversial project and crowdfunding is hard enough to begin with. Like crowdfunding is a full-time job. Like it was probably the most stressful month of my life. But we raised the money somehow. But it was like there was an entire community of friends that I lost. They just didn't support the story, and they were my friends that I knew from more religious backgrounds, and they just didn't understand the message that I was trying to put out and why I was doing it in this way and why I was doing it so publicly. And when you're making art and it is controversial and it's provocative and it's intended to be that way, sometimes people aren't going to love it. And I don't know, I guess I'm of the opinion that if people are reacting to your art, then that's a good thing. And we've had some really positive reactions and we've had some really negative reactions, and it's just making people think about things in a different way. So that's been a journey. Something that was really positive on set was just the environment. We had a really great cast and crew. Like the team was really behind the story and really wanted to do everything that they could to make it happen. And that was really amazing. And a bunch of artists like donated things. Like we had an artist hand paint the jacket that my character was wearing. It's like a denim jacket and it's got these sunflowers on it. And that was really cool. So just the community of people that came together to make it was probably the most inspiring thing that happened.
And I think that's really neat how these two things kind of happened one right after another. Like you crowdfund and you end up losing some people in your circle. And, maybe if your art is a reflection of you, maybe that's okay, or maybe that's time. And I think as artists, it's good to note that these these things can happen, and it's something to consider. But I love that, you know, in that process, you gained a community, you gained a new artistic community that seems like very welcoming and positive and encouraging and supportive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, I feel like from what I saw, I love that there's kind of like some levity there, and it's, you know, a balance of drama and comedy. Is that something that was important to you to have in the story, or um did you have other aspects that you really wanted to be a part of the story, or was your process more just free form, you know, write this monologue and then figure out from there how to piece it together?
Well, it was kind of both. It was originally, it stemmed from the monologue, and I created this character to be a comedic character, to be the light in the darkness of the messed up patriarchy that is the Catholic Church. And also to just kind of like answer my own questions that I had. It's like, if a God is all knowing and all loving, why wouldn't they love you exactly as you are and exactly as you were created? And this character I kind of created to be really sure of herself and sure that she was loved no matter what.
Mm.
And so from there, I kind of like struck this balance of drama and comedy to create this kind of dark comedy series that deals with these like really serious topics, but in hopefully a lighter, more accessible way.
That's awesome. Let's take a look at the trailer for Nun Habits.
You're a nun smoking a 17-year-old's joint and asking her not to snitch on you.
Well, it sounds really bad when you say it like that.
You're communicating with a young, impressionable mind, and we want to assure you're not sending her the wrong message about what life in the convent is like.
Do you think I could borrow a couple of bucks to get coffee?
Really?
April, I took a vow of poverty.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Do you want a refill? I have money.
You're not exactly the most traditional nun that has come through our order.
I really wanted to paint this sunflower for my
friend?
for my friend.
I need to practice drawing eyes. Can I draw yours?
Sure. Shut up.
Go talk to her.
Hello?
Hi. I'm looking for Sister Cecilia. Is she available to talk?
Oh my God, did you hear what he said? He needs to find Jesus.
Monica, okay, that's so exciting. I can't wait for all of our guests to see the full thing and not just the trailer. So, you said that there is some exciting news. Did you want to share that and where people can can go see this?
So it is actually going to be on Roku by the time that this goes up. We've signed an agreement with Roku and it's going to be on their platform. So go watch it there. The more views we get, the better it is for us to potentially have a season 2. So, you know, just we would love for you to go check it out.
Indie Film Rap audience, everyone go check it out on Roku. That's very exciting. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'd love to chat as we start to wrap things up here, but I really want to hear more about your production company. Was that something that you felt was necessary to create for the crowdfunding, or was that just something that you started prior to or post this project? Can you share a little insight on that for our audience?
So when I was making Nun Habits, I was realizing that I was going to be hiring a lot of people, a lot of independent contractors, and I was going to have a lot of money coming in from the crowdfunding. And then I just kind of looked at like my situation and what I wanted to do for the future. And I realized that I was going to want to keep making films, and that I was going to want to keep working with artists and independent artists and continue to, make a solid platform, or I guess library of content. And I decided to do that under the umbrella of a production company. So I founded one around the same time that I started crowdfunding, and I, registered it, and I did all of the necessary legal paperwork that you have to do when you start a production company. And now I've had a couple of projects under my belt, which has been really exciting. And a couple of shorts, a couple of web series, a music video. So it's all been, really fulfilling.
So is that something that you would recommend to people, filmmakers getting out of school, if they, again, want to be owning and making their own projects? Do you recommend that? Do you think that was a good decision?
I think it was right for me. I don't know if it's right for everyone. I think if you just want to make the one project, you can probably find a production company to partner with, something small and independent like mine. There's a ton of them where I live in New York City. I'm sure there's a ton in other places. But if you think it's going to be something that you're consistently doing and you're prepared to do your taxes as a production company every year, then I would say go for it. But it is a lot of work and it is a lot of responsibility. So I would maybe do research before diving deep into just founding a production company.
Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like that's something that, maybe they don't talk about as much in school, and these business aspects are good for our audience and viewers to know. So thank you for sharing kind of the pros and cons of each.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely didn't get any of that when I was in school, any of the legal logistic stuff.
Yep. Yeah, there should definitely be more of that, but I'm curious, you touched on it a little bit. You're based in New York, and being a filmmaker in New York, I'm sure, is similar to being an actor, where there can be a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of competition. Do you want to share a little bit about your experience so far in New York and some of the maybe positives or negatives of being a filmmaker in that location?
What I really like about New York, and I think it's different than LA, is that people here are just real with you. They're going to tell you how they're feeling. There are a lot of people that want to make work, so there is always something that you can be doing. The downside, I think, is finding the right people to work with and finding a community that you really gel with and that you really resonate with and that the work feels aligned. There's a lot of opportunities to day play. There's a lot of really cool stuff being made. Most of the work that I get off of recommendations or through networks that I belong to, like New York City Women in Film and Television, those kinds of organizations. So I would say just find the communities that resonate with you, go to networking events, share your work, go to film festivals. I met a bunch of people at Stereable Film Festival when I wasn't even in the festival. I just saw a deal for a cheap festival pass on a Facebook ad, and I just purchased it, and I went and I met so many cool filmmakers there. So just, networking is probably your biggest asset in this city, because a lot of the work is really just, who do you know? I'll text my friends and I'll be like, hey, I need a first AD for this weekend. Do you know anyone? And that's how I get connected to other really cool people.
And I love that about even things like going to film festivals. Yeah, anywhere where you can meet other creatives and get connected and collaborate. So great tip there. You've already shared so many great tips. But before we let you go, I wanted to see if you had any more tips or advice for maybe young filmmakers who are making that transition from being in school to their first few years out.
Creating your own work is always great. And you should definitely work at the level that you're at and bring those around you up with you. But also get experience with people who are so much further along than you and offer to help out. I would also say, if you don't love the script, then it might not be the right one to be doing right now. It takes a lot of effort and energy and time, especially when you're out of school and also like working whatever job you're trying to pay your bills, to make a film. And sometimes it's not the right one. And sometimes you sign on to a project and it doesn't vibe as well as you thought it would. So just like trust your intuition and also have fun.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many great tips. Thank you so much, Monica Arsenault, for joining us. And everybody, go check out Nun Habits.
Thank you so much, Sierra. It was great talking to you. And thanks for having me.